What began at Disneyland as one or two kids walking around with the measles has now exploded into a full-scale health alert. The latest news has up to 1,000 kids exposed to the disease in Arizona, where hundreds of thousands of tourists travel every day. And people are right now gathering for the Super Bowl. And still some people refuse to believe they are part of a massive health problem. So let's roll up our sleeves and welcome back Newsmax Deputy Health Editor Nick Tate to talk more about this. Nick, I got to tell you, I've been getting a whole lot of grief from people on social media in the last couple of weeks. I did a commentary last week that was very hard and hammered a lot of these people. And they're all coming back to me, some of them, not all of them, saying, how dare you tell me what the government can do to my kid? My kid doesn't deserve to be involved with it, and you can't tell me what to do with my child. Wait a minute. Isn't the bigger issue here, we're not trying to tell you what to do with your child? You choose to not inoculate your kid, go right ahead. But think of everybody else that you're putting in jeopardy.
That's exactly the right point. I mean, and it's not just the federal government. It's virtually every medical, professional medical group in the world that says these childhood vaccines are not only safe, but they are effective. Measles vaccine is 99% effective at preventing measles. But if you don't get your kid vaccinated, your child has a 90% chance of getting the measles if, in fact, your child comes in contact with a child who has the measles. This is really the issue. At one time, parents could decide not to vaccinate their kid, and they would be one child in 10,000, one child in 20,000. That's not going to put a lot of children at risk. At this point, we're looking at numbers that are close to 1 in 1,000, 1 in a couple thousand kids in places like California that are not being vaccinated. And as you know, children under the age of 12 are not vaccinated. Those childhood vaccines begin at age 1. So if you're bringing your kid to a pediatrician's office who's under the age of 1 and there are other children there who are unvaccinated, your kid is at risk. And let's not forget, measles is not just a simple infection. It's not just a simple problem. It can kill you. So when you make that decision as a parent, it's not just about I want to keep my kids safe, because there is theoretical risk from vaccines, although the science says there really is not much risk at all. If you make that decision, maybe you need to be deciding, I'm not putting my kid in school, I'm not putting my kid in daycare, I'm not bringing my kid to a pediatrician's office, and then we have some real risk to those children that parents are deciding about.
So let's deal with some of the realities that we know here, at least, because It seems like we get together on this and now we have to start putting a lid on all of the various rumors and innuendo that's out there.
Right.
First of all, yes, you can die from a case of measles. It is not a completely safe disease, if you want to go ahead and use that. People don't get that. They still think, for whatever reason, we're invincible.
Better to have the disease than the vaccine is what some of the anti-vaxxers feel, but that's not true. Measles kills. Before measles was largely vanquished in the early 80s, it did kill children. Dozens of children or hundreds of children a year died. It's not just a rite of childhood passage. The other myth that's out there is that somehow getting measles offers and confers better immunity than the vaccine. That is not true. There are significant dangers associated with this virus, as well as whooping cough and the other things that kids are vaccinated against. So the idea of natural immunity being better than vaccine antibodies is absolutely wrong. The third thing I think we need to deal with is somehow that there are high levels of mercury in childhood vaccines. There are not. In a very, very small number of vaccines, there are very trace elements of a chemical that does contain some mercury. All of the research that's been done suggests that there is no harm here, there's no danger here, and in fact the FDA is continuing to work to bring those levels even lower. The other thing you should know, if you're really worried about it, is in most cases a parent can say to a doctor, I'd like the vaccine formulation that does not contain mercury. In many of those cases you can get it. So there's some information. If you're a parent trying to decide, what can I do? Talk to your pediatrician, talk to your doctor. But here's a warning. Many pediatricians are saying, if you decide not to vaccinate your kid, I'm afraid I'm just not going to be able to see your child because I cannot put the other patients at risk.
There's a school, actually, a parent in Northern California, in Marin County, who says, I don't want my kid going to a school unless I know that every single child at the school is vaccinated. I don't know, maybe I'm 6,000 years old, but I seem to remember a time when I was a kid where you couldn't go to school. Everybody's vaccination was checked, but now because we have religious preferences, pre-existing conditions, people who don't believe in it, they are allowed then to come and not bring their kids to the school.
That's right.
That's dangerous. I mean, I feel us almost moving to the point where we're going to see, again, governments, which people are afraid of, taking that hand and saying, if you're not vaccinated, you can't come in, we don't care about anything else. People scream about government, but they're going to have to do something here. This is out of hand.
Those regulations actually still exist, Ed. I mean, it was very rare when we were kids that somebody would say, I'm not going to vaccinate my kid because of religious preference or orientation. No. Now it's happening with greater frequency. Often it's really not religious feelings that are driving, but it's the fear, as you say, of government. Those laws do exist on the books. I think they're going to need to be more closely regulated, and we will need to look at them. My hope is that this whole Disneyland experience really becomes a wake-up call. I think for too long, some of the folks who've had views that are way out on the end, are really outlier views, have been kind of given a pass. I think that this should do what we are doing right now, which is talking about what the myths are, what the realities are, how to really keep your kids safe. And the best recommendation that I can make is if you have concerns, talk to your pediatrician. This is the man or the woman who has treated thousands, tens of thousands of kids, and see what your options are. Make that person your primary guide, not some celebrity who says, my kid got autism because I gave him the measles shot. That's crazy.
Look, we can't deal with the religious preferences. If that's the way someone feels, that's the way someone feels. They have the right to do that. We cannot force them to do anything. But then again, we have a lot of parents who are claiming pre-existing conditions where none really exist.
Right.
Aren't there other drugs that can be given? If a kid has a pre-existing condition, they cannot receive the measles vaccine. There must be something that the doctors can do for them other than, or maybe it is just keeping them at home and letting them sweat it out of their system. I don't know.
That's usually the case. In fact, you know, what we're really talking about are kids who have cancer, or they have a condition where medically they cannot receive the vaccine because it puts them at risk. And the truth is that those kids are at greater risk of contracting measles because they are not protected. They don't have the vaccine. So it's not just young kids under the age of 12, but it's those children who can't get the vaccine because they have a pre-existing condition. The truth is there's nothing that's as effective as the measles vaccine, 99% effective in preventing it. There is some evidence that vitamin A can reduce the severity, but nothing's going to prevent it like a vaccine. The other point I should make is that there's a concern for older folks as well. There's evidence that your immunity wanes. If you were given the childhood vaccine, by the time you get to your 50s and your 60s, you may lose the ability to have protection, and it's really good to ask your doctor about the antibody tests they can do to tell you whether you should get a booster shot. So it's not just young kids, it's older folks too.
We understand that people have reasons. We sympathize with that, and certain things cannot be done. We get it. However, to just say I'm not going to get my kid vaccinated for listening to Jenny McCarthy and some of the other whack jobs that are out there is a way to maybe kill your kid and kill somebody else.
You're right. I mean,
that's frightening.
You need to evaluate the information on the basis of the source. Is it credible? Is it a celebrity? Is it a doctor? Is it a medical authority?
All right. Nick Tate, thanks so much for joining us.
All right.
When we come back, more. Because those seeking a perfect place to waste any amount of money, just contact the federal government. It's next on MidPoint.